Alan doesn't get
You
an
know.
email apparently from Tracy or
Still
something,
trying to
since I'm vice
negotiate that
chair,
charter.
but
I was
he's
talking to Mike Hillhouse today and I said,
Is it,
you know, you get a raise
Right.
schedule and then you got
should I be giving it to Derek though, or should
I
I?
think you should
Which
check it out
one?
and see what the story
currently
is.
going on.
Okay.
Whether,
They haven't finished that yet?
whatever the
Oh, it's
situation is,
done.
if it's a grandfather
Have
certificate,
you, had you
owner
walked
gets to
away
use the
and
old
over
sign,
there?
or does
Yeah,
the new
but
owner have to
you
apply for the
know,
new sign? I think that's what he wants to know.
Can I, pull out the mantras from years ago as to that intersection and the other ones that are being worked on?
What are you monitoring?
Okay.
You know,
Do we
it's
have
been an
enough to
issue.
move forward?
And the road cut is never gonna be any different. Try going in and out of
Brian?
Tyler Drive.
Do we have enough members here to move forward?
That right
Here's
hand
you do,
turn out of
yes,
Tyler Drive is worse.
We do?
yes, you do.
I will call this meeting to order. This is the June 10th, 2010 meeting of the Goffstown Planning Board. We'll go around the room, starting with Brian over here, and introduce members of the board and staff, please.
My name's Brian Rose, I'm the town planner.
Philip Devanza. Lowell Von Ruden.
Gail Breck, Recording Secretary.
Alan Yaten, Chair.
Barbara Griffin.
Tim Redmond, vice chair.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to take care of a few first-minute business items. Members of the board, anybody action on minutes of May 13th? I gotta find mine, because I did have
didn't-
something on May 13th.
Motion to approve. One second.
Motion by Phil, seconded by Lowell. There is a note in here on one of those, if I can find the right copy of mine, where, yes, on May 27th, so we'll cover that later. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved as edited. How about the minutes of May 27th, 2010? Members of the board?
Move to approve with a correction.
Page 5.
Yep. Steve
5,
Griffin.
yes.
Yes.
I'm glad somebody edits that. It should be
Steve Dutton.
Steve Dutton.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other corrections?
I like to transpose names.
And I'll second it.
Motion by Lowell, seconded by Barbara. Any discussion, further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I believe there were some corrections that had gone out late. Gail, do you know if those were included?
Patty had said she was gonna put them in a folder,
Oh, yeah.
to review. It had to do with the conditions to the Sharon application.
That's right.
Just
Mr. Chair, you
just some of the
probably have
wording.
those in your folder.
Oh, you give me a whole pile of papers. Shame on you.
There, in the minutes, there should be a highlighted section on about page 5, I believe. If you'd like, I can try to help you find it.
No, it's
Let that be a lesson to give them anything ahead of the meeting.
shame on you,
I should
Barbara.
have pointed that out to you prior, and that was my mistake.
I saw it and then ignored it. I'm sorry. But anyways, moving forward, do you want to just accept that as corrections as modified by staff? Barbara?
I'm all right
Oh.
with that.
Can you give us a quick brief on what those two changes were offhand?
Uh,
I think some of the,
There,
Barbara
it
did
was,
She
it was
looked at
one
my-
paragraph,
yes?
and it had been copied twice. Once was a portion of the discussion in the meeting, and the second portion of it was the portion in the motion. And so that paragraph in the discussion had been copied twice, and both of them had some minor mistakes, and we just wanted to clarify. It was regarding, I have to
Lot number?
think now.
It was the Sharon application.
It was regarding the Sharon
Sharon
application
application, that's correct.
on the correction to the stipulations. We just wanted to make sure that it had been given correctly. and
Always look in
looks
the
like you
front of the
found it
file.
right there. We-
Hey, Alan?
All else fails.
Alan? Look at the front of the.
Look at the front of the file. Not inside. Yes.
We wanted to just make sure that it had been given exactly as had been discussed in the meeting, and so I had taken very copious notes, and there were a few minor changes that we just had to make to that paragraph, and so we changed that, and that's what you have. If you want to read it so that everybody has it, that would be fine.
Yes, it had to do with Collis Adams's motion for condition 9 should read, the front portion of the property abutting East Dunbarton Road shall have all fill material removed concurrently with the development of the first lot of the approved subdivision and shall be replanted to the planning director's satisfaction at the time of the construction of the first house. And the second part of that was to delete condition 11. Lowell, you okay with that?
What page are you on?
Yeah, what page?
It's this little amendment, you don't have it. It was a staple to the front of
Yeah,
the,
but where is it supposed to go in the minutes?
it goes under the motion for approval.
What page?
Excuse me. I got 14 different copies of the minutes here.
We only have 18 pages.
Let me see if I can find it.
Page 5 of, it says 5 of 60,
Are we talking about May 27th?
May
Yes.
13th.
We already approved May 13th.
Yes,
I
I
thought we
know.
were on, the motion was for May
Yeah, we haven't-
27th.
Yeah, we'll go backwards, okay? We'll perform corrective duties here in a minute. Okay. We have a motion on the floor for May 27th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The minutes of
Motion
May
to
27th.
reconsider May 13th minutes.
Need a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, reconsideration.
Go back to page 5.
Can I see what you have? I think it's actually page 7.
All right, on page 5, it constitutes a typo. It should be request to reconsider condition 11, map 9, lot 4-38, instead of 38-4. And then on page 7, when we were doing the motion, the condition 9, in the second paragraph, there's a clarification added for abutting East Dunbarton Road concurrently with removal of the fill in the first lot. Additionally, on that page, the motion is numbered. The Collis Adams made a motion to include the reference so that it abuts East Dunbarton Road, and as Alan said previously, in conjunction with approval of the planning director at the time. So I'll make a motion to amend as recommended by
Second.
staff.
Motion by Barbara, seconded by Phil. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for your consideration. That was easy.
I hope the rest of the night goes as well.
We elected him.
I'm sorry.
You can't beg forgiveness, Phil.
I know.
Do we need to have any discussion before we open our regular agenda, Brian, about the housing needs assessment?
Mr. Chair,
That was sent to everybody?
Mr. Chair, that, I put it at the end of the agenda. We're gonna have Barbara give a presentation. She's been regularly involved in this committee. In fact, she's the chair of the committee with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And I tried to invite Jillian Harris from the Planning Commission, and she had another meeting to attend tonight. So Barbara's going to give us a presentation on this, and we just want to get some comments. But we didn't want to hold up the rest of the items on the agenda for that, for us to be able to do that, since there's a lot of people here from the public. We just want to put that at the end of the agenda.
All right. So noted. Anybody have any interest in a timber cut on map 3, lot 62-2 Violet Street, Owner is Alger, A-L-G-E-R. Any comment? He proposes to cut some white pine, and that's about it from the site. It's a back lot off of Violet Street. Any questions, concerns? So noted then. Corrections, minutes, we've been through that. Does anybody have anything else? We got 2 or 3 minutes that we wish to bring to the board before we start our regular scheduled meeting. Agenda.
The agenda actually says 7 rather than 7:15, so you don't have to wait.
Okay, thank you. I have one question. Anybody would like to, additional information, plans or whatever about the roundabout proposed for Wallace Road and South Mass Street? Or Mass Road, is it? Stand corrected if it's different. Anybody wish to have a copy of that plan for their perusal or comments?
It's online, actually.
We're online.
I don't know,
Website.
no, Megan emailed it to me. I had a question
Megan.
about something. It's
Yes.
It's on the
online.
Main website. I believe they've kind of moved it around, but there's a big red bar, or not, it got moved from there. There's a red line that says traffic alert / ARA projects. So if you click on the ARA projects, there's several projects listed. One is the Dana's Park, one is the South Mass Street drainage, and one is the Mass Road sewer. It should be under the South Mass Street drainage project. There should be something about the original construction plans, which are, I believe, August 2009, and then there's a change order plan set, which includes the roundabout plans. So
Okay.
it is online.
All right,
If the board would like, I can bring it in and put it up if they would like that.
only as a matter of information to have it in the room if somebody cares to ask a question from time to time. Wouldn't hurt to have it publicized a little bit in the town, whatever. Our regular agenda, start with item number 1. Unless somebody wants to pursue some other order of business. Anybody have any suggestions to move around items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll start in regular correspondence. Item number 1, under new business. Map 5, lot 61-1 and 95-1. For a completeness review, final site plan and conditional use permit hearing for a proposed excavation project to excavate approximately 6 to 8 feet of material, 623,000 square foot of excavation area from the properties Brookfield Investment Group, Inc., Mast Road, Norman Road, Crestwood Lane, and Wallace Road, Zone Residential 1 and Agricultural. Brian, what can you tell us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you stated, this is the Mast Road excavation project. Tonight, they are here before you just for acceptance of their site plan. This is the site that they are working on. It's between Wallace Road and Norman Road, just south of Mast Road. That's 2 parcels, and the red line in between there signifies where the distinction of the other parcel is. And it also signifies the distinction between where the different zones are. The red is the residential 1, and the green is the agricultural. This is an aerial shot of the property. You can see in the center there's a graded area, which is currently, I believe, a sand pit that has already been excavated. So the request is to excavate approximately 6 to 8 feet on a portion of the property to make it more usable. And the future planned use is ball fields and a park. The Mast Road excavation project site plan is what's on this screen. I'm going to give a few screens worth of it because it was broken up. This is the front page. This is the second page. It shows the topography on there and somewhat more of what the project would be grading. This is a little bit more clear of an area showing exactly where the grading is to occur. As you can see, it's some distance away from any of the residences in the area. So hopefully that would not deter from any of the residences right there. This is just a zoomed in area. They're showing the path to Normand Road. There's an existing path already there, so they're planning to use that existing path and to put gravel on it. This is a future plan of what the park could look like with the ball fields. I believe that's the last page of the site plan. Key considerations, the property does have wetlands on it. Voters turned down the request this past March to purchase for the town to purchase the property for the ball fields. The applicant is still proposing this use and wishes to put it back on the ballot in the future for the town to vote on it. And the ball fields would be a compatible use with surrounding residential uses. The applicant has requested a waiver, actually 2 waivers, for submittal of the drainage study and the final grading and drainage plan. And this is for acceptance purposes only. The reason why they're requesting it for acceptance purposes only is hopefully to get some guidance from the board, because they've been to you before and apparently had been down the wrong path on a previous time. And so just wanted to make sure they're going down the right path with their plans before they spend the extra money to do the drainage study and the final grading plan. So they did state that they're willing to waive the 65-day clock because that would take additional time for review before they could even submit that, and that would put a crunch on the staff's time to be able to review that within that amount of time. So they are willing to do that, and that they provided a letter to you in the packet detailing those requests. So staff recommendation is to give the waiver for the drainage report and the final grading plan for acceptance purposes only, and to find that this site does not have a regional impact, as it is not adjacent to any other towns or it's not proposing any major traffic or anything like that. And then to accept the proposed site plan for review and to continue its further consideration to the June 24th meeting, which would be in 2 weeks, as was noticed to the public. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Members of the board, consideration of item 1, which would be the waivers. Any discussion? Barbara?
Yeah, I have a question. My recollection is, and staff provided the motion in regards to, the other plan that was before it, in regards to resubmitting an application for the gravel permit and to apply the fee, was part of the motion, and that happened with this. But I don't quite honestly understand the waiver requests. And I understand there was some reference to previous applications, but, I mean, this is just an excavation permit. This has nothing to do with the plan for anything at the current time. So, I guess I don't understand why this would be treated any differently than any other permit for excavation, especially considering the amount of wetlands on this site, which are considerable. I mean, I walked this years ago in conjunction with another application, and it's my understanding that it's more wet now, as I would expect, than it even was back then. So that's really my question is on this, because, I mean, under the regs, there's a process to apply for the excavation, which can be followed, but the rest of it, to me, is immaterial. We're talking about an excavation permit.
Mr. Chair and Board Member Griffin, that staff did consider that, and I actually spoke to Megan before, putting this recommendation down. The only reason that I did go ahead and put it on there was because they weren't stating that they were not going to provide it in the future. They do plan to provide the grading and the drainage report prior to getting any approval from the town or from anyone else. They just wanted to make sure that they were on the right path and get any guidance from you. So if the board wishes, they can also recommend to not accept it at this point in time and wait for the drainage report. If that would be another consideration that the board could take, and I believe staff would be okay with that. It would not alter any of our plans. You may want to ask the applicant what they feel, how they feel about that.
In follow-up, Chair, please?
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that staff should have handled it differently. It's just that this sounds more like a conceptual, and I understand from conversations and timing, sort of by the time it got in, it was already in, so we're past the conceptual, and since they waived the 65-day, it's not theoretically an issue. But the problem with waivers, and this board knows I sort of beat the drum on waiver requests, is that you essentially accept and approve a plan for excavation without having any idea what the implications are on a site with a lot of wetlands where there's now a 100-foot setback, and according to our regs, there's supposed to be a reclamation plan. So I am very hesitant to proceed in consideration of it. And it's a process issue for me. It's not the excavation itself.
Phil?
My recollection is when this came before us the last time, that what we had said was that it should come back as a excavation, follow the excavation process.
Oh,
That
any,
was my recollection as well.
Tim, any thoughts?
I have the same recollection as was just expressed.
Yes, you're looking over here.
Well,
I
no,
know you have something to say.
I walked in at the middle of this, but I understand the applicant's caution because they guessed wrong or misunderstood before, and I can't fault them for proceeding in smaller steps this time. And I understand the concern about not waiving, but you could, if you grant the waiver, you just condition any further proceedings to receipt of whatever's missing. So it's, by accepting it, you tell the applicant, yeah, you're doing it right, now bring in the hard work. If we don't accept it, the statute requires us to tell them why we're not, which puts them in the same position, but I don't want them to have to reapply. I can continue the proceeding and tell them why we're not accepting, or we can accept and grant a waiver that's conditioned, that conditions any further hearings on submission of the missing material, puts us in the same place. I guess I'm not as hung up on the procedural aspects in the end, as long as we have the material before us by the time we start our substantive review.
So the actual motion would have been to waive for acceptance purposes only, those two items, is that correct?
Correct, and then to condition any further proceedings on submittal of the drainage report and final grading plan.
Tim?
We routinely accept applications with this type of language, that for acceptance purposes only, we'll grant a waiver, but then prior to any actual hearing or decision, those conditions have to be met.
Would we want to waive that and provide some more stipulative kind of guidance to the applicant as to what we would want in the future? Jim?
Well, it
Isn't
depends if
necessary.
there are other threshold design issues. For example, if there's a substantial question about what we're going to be looking at, that will impact the drainage report or the final grading plan, you know, again, I don't think this isn't a game of gotcha where we make the applicant guess in advance what we're gonna want. I don't know, because we don't have the detail, whether there are any of those threshold issues, but having slightly contradicting what I just said, I don't wanna create sort of artificial actions they have to take if there's some good planning reason why we should defer them, like the final drainage report and final grading plan. Not knowing more about the application, I don't know if those issues exist.
Okay.
Just as a final note on this issue before you probably address outside of the board, I note that the plans say the wetlands mapping on this was done in 2002. It's been some time since an application on this particular property was before us. And again, I think it creates some difficulties in even doing a waiver for acceptance only.
So you're suggesting that the wetlands boundaries may have changed based upon,
Not unusual
Who
for
knows?
wetlands boundaries to change over time.
true, and there's also a portion of this site's in the 100-year floodplain.
Correct.
Those kind of issues that aren't shown here yet. So there are some items of data that haven't been shown yet, and we understand that. I think we all understand that, so. Specifically, if we're gonna waive something before the applicant leaves here, we ought to give them some guidance as to what some of the concerns are. I'm sure he's taking notes over there based upon the comments so far. And I would think the board members should feel free to add some more comments before the applicant leaves this evening, because I don't have an option here because there's no public hearing tonight, so we really don't hear from the public tonight, unless the board so desires to.
It's an acceptance
hearing
only.
only. So, based upon that, what's the board's pleasure?
I would move, I came late, may I still participate?
I can make the motion.
Yes, you may.
I would move that we waive for acceptance purposes the submittal of the drainage report and the final drainage report, but.
Final grading plan.
I'm sorry, yeah, you read better than I do.
I just,
Final grading plan, but we'll note that we won't, I won't say we won't hear this before the application is next presented, but we will not engage in substantive review of this application until we have the drainage report and final grading plan before us. Just by way of, I'm saying that so if the applicant has threshold issues it wants us to address, we'll give them the opportunity, but we're not gonna waste a lot of time digging into this until we have those, if that's fair. And that we are not waiving any requirements for upgraded wetlands marking or anything else. I think we're giving the applicant fair warning, we probably will require that, but for acceptance purposes only, I'm not going to require it. I would also add that we find that this site plan does not have a regional impact, and if the waiver is granted, we accept it for review and continue it to June 24th.
I'll second the motion.
Before, you did item 1 and 2. I'd like to carry that as a single vote and then
Fine.
move on to when we move it to.
That's fine.
Do I hear a second to the motion to waive for acceptance purposes only and find that the site plan does not have regional impact?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Nay.
2 nays. Phil and Barbara. Chair votes yes. Motion carries.
May I make the rest of the motion now?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's number 3, we accept, having granted the waivers, we accept this, move that we accept the proposed site plan for review. may I combine this with the continuation, or would you like to
Yes.
vote on those? And we continue it to June 24th, as previously noticed.
We have a motion by Jim. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Any discussion? Do you wish to advise the applicant at this particular point in time, any particular concerns before we vote on the motion?
In addition to those we just,
Yes. Anybody have any other concerns
well,
in advance?
we're not waiving them by.
We're not waiving them? No, we're not. Do you have any words of wisdom for the applicant?
Don't press us too much.
Okay,
Let's wait and see what they have before we give them any wisdom.
all right.
I have little to give.
Mr.
Does the
Chairman?
board, yes, Phil?
Yeah, I would like to know, all I heard was they're looking to excavate 6 to 8 feet off a portion, but I'd like to know about how many square feet that 6 to 8 feet encompasses, because actually, I can't determine as to whether or not this has a regional impact or not, because if they're only gonna take 6 to 8 feet off of, let's say, 20 by 40 area versus 1 acre by a half acre, I mean, it's a tremendous amount, so, difference.
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to go to the applicant and ask them, how many cubic yards does this,
On the plan, not here, it's not moving design group. On the plan, there was 623,000 square feet.
Yeah, right there.
And we're taking that down 6 to 8 feet. Multiply
Can
that
you,
by
can you
7.
convert that into how
Yeah.
many 10-wheelers that, becomes-
Not today, but I can
Well-
get that for you, yep.
if it's gonna be 100 10-wheelers or 300 10-wheelers, I mean, that might make my difference on how I vote as to the impact of the excavation.
any other comments, board members? It's 140,000 yards.
About that, that's what we came up with, yeah. I'm getting those.
Divided by 12.
Any further questions? Move the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
Hey,
I don't have enough information to make a determination. I have no idea how many trucks are going out of that site.
Motion carries, chair voted in affirmative, yes. 4-2. Moving on to the next item on this evening's agenda. Map 18, Lot 30. Completeness review, final site plan review hearing for a proposal to amend an existing site plan to add a landscaping business use to the property along with the current existing commercial uses. Robert Paris, Paris Auto Inc., Mass Road, Attain Street, and Joffrey Street, zoned commercial. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, as you stated, the Paris Auto project, and Mr. Paris is proposing to add a landscaping business to his site. They have a site plan that was approved back in 1989. This is the site right here. It's on Mast Road and Attain Street, and it also abuts Joffrey Street. And it's on the south side of Mass Road. There's currently an auto business in the building on the north. And then if you look at the building just on the south within that red area, that's the building with which they want to put the landscaping business. This is an aerial. It's not a great aerial, but you can sort of see what the site looks like. When the photograph was taken, they had used this for auto storage because of the auto shop there. They now want to use that back portion where it looks like a dirt lot, which it is a dirt lot actually, for the landscaping business to store materials and such. And that building there, again, would become their office for the landscaping business. So that, I already stated the request. This is a site plan, and this just kind of details out the area with which they would be using for the landscaping business. The portion adjacent to Mass Road, which is on the right on this picture, would be used primarily for parking, and the portion on the left would be where the landscaping materials would be stored. Key considerations: no new structures are proposed on the property. All the applicable building standards and NFPA standards would apply to this new business. Basically, that is meaning to say that they would have to bring that building in the rear up to any codes that are necessary for operating a business out of it. Since currently it's only been used as a garage, I believe it does not have any plumbing or anything like that in the building, so they would have to do some interior changes to the building in order to make it usable for a business. Screening of the landscaping materials should be a consideration. Parking area needs to be striped, and the landscaping island along Patane, I went out there, and actually it doesn't have anything except for rocks in it, so it would be nice to get it planted, so that might be a recommendation from the board. Waivers: the applicant has requested a waiver on the submittal requirement for engineered drawings of the revised site plan. They believe that because they're not proposing any new structures or actual major changes to the site plan, that they might be able to get a waiver on this. That would be up to the board to determine that. So after going out to the site, I went out there actually with Megan for a few brief minutes, and we kind of determined that we should add a few other recommended conditions of approval. One, the landscape island along Patane shall be planted with trees and shrubs in accordance with the town standards and shall be subject to approval by the town planner. The parking lot along Patane Street shall be striped in accordance with the town's parking stall standards. And the parking lot area shall not be used for storage of any materials and shall only be used for vehicle parking.
Excuse me.
And then we're to the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board does waive the engineered drawings, and that they find that the site plan does not have a regional impact, and that they accept the proposed site plan for review and hold the public hearing as was noticed, and approve the site plan with conditions 1 through 6 plus the additional recommended stipulation conditions from the previous slide. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Brian. Members of the board? Yes, Lowell?
Can you flip back to, like that first diagram you had?
This one?
Yeah, that one. It's kinda hard to read up on the wall there, but in the upper left of the highlighted area is a note that says this lot is not to be used for commercial purposes.
Thank you for bringing that up. I meant to address that, and it escaped me. That note does exist on the old site plan. What I also tried to include in your packet was a decision on some zoning that occurred right after this property had gotten a site plan approval. That should be the next page after, in your site plan packet, after the report.
Article 11 of the town meeting.
Correct.
Of 1990.
That property was subsequently zoned at the request of the property owner, commercial, and voted as such by the town. So I don't believe that note could be enforceable anymore. After being zoned commercial, we have to allow them to do commercial land uses, so.
Agreed.
Just a question. This
Yes,
is a
Barbara.
permitted use in the commercial district, correct?
That is correct.
Tim?
Well, I'm wondering about, what do we consider a material change to the previously approved plan? And I think that this large area that's going to be used constitutes a material change, so therefore I would not be inclined to make any waivers at this time. Engineered drawings especially, because you're going to have more paved areas, which are going to have more runoff. You're going to have different amounts of traffic coming and going here. There's a lot of issues that have to be dealt with, so I don't believe we should be granting any waivers at this time. We can grant them for acceptance only if the applicant would like to go that direction, but I do not see us straight out granting a waiver at this time for engineered drawings.
Roll.
I agree with Tim.
Bill?
Can I make a suggestion that we waive it but retain the right, that if we feel after we,
So waive it for acceptance then.
well, waive it for acceptance, but also, I guess, the ability that if we feel that we need them. I mean, at this point, I don't know that, I don't feel that we absolutely do need them, but I can't say that we don't. I don't mind waiving them for the acceptance, but
I didn't say we wouldn't waive them in the future. I said we waive them for acceptance only, and then they can be discussed at a later date if they decide they want to ask for the waiver, and then the board can
as
discuss
long as
it.
they are aware of that.
Well,
Okay, because that,
but they'd have to make a pretty strong point, though. So if you're going to finish your statement.
no, that's not, I'm just saying is that I can't say that we don't need them.
We have no information on the amount of traffic, there's a note on the plan here, it says area to be paved. I don't know what is or isn't paved there at this time. So there's a lot of things that have to be discussed, and to waive engineered drawings at this time would be reckless, I think.
Yeah, considering the existing one is more than 20 years old.
I was just gonna ask that question. Is there a specific date on the old plan? Was it 1988? Did I see?
89, I thought it said.
1989.
1989. 21 years old. Been a lot of change in the regulations since then in terms of
Yeah.
what we expect to happen in a commercial zone. If in fact it's the board's wish not to waive the requirement for engineered drawings, at this point, does that mean that we'd accept this for a public hearing at this time, or would we want to wait until such time as they come back to us with the proper documentation? Members of the board?
I'd be
Is
okay
that what
with
I'm hearing?
Well, if we do accept it, it starts the 65-day clock.
We definitely haven't waived that right from the get-go, or it's not going anywhere. And if that's the case, we still potentially have abutters that may want to give us some insight and input. If you visited the site, there's some extra storage trailers. There's a car sales trailer on one side of the building, a couple dead cars in the backyard. The fence against the abutter is falling over. I think you want to be cautious, would be what I would say. Be very specific about what you approve or what your conditions might be.
Mr. Chair, just as a
Yes.
point of clarification, as one of the conditions of approval, I did note that any fencing that was in disrepair would have to be repaired, and also actually went ahead and required that the side along Patain Street would be required to have also stockade fencing, because currently there's a chain link with barbed wire along the top, and that would better screen the materials from the residential area across the street and to the and to the south.
Barbara, you got any concerns, comments?
I mean, I have my standard mantra about waivers. I would have been more comfortable with this if I could look at this and get some idea about what's going to go on this site. I think I understand the applicant wanted to use the existing plan he had, but, and you leave notes on plans that have previously been there, but it really is, and I'm familiar with the lot. I mean, there used to be a tow company on the back part of this lot, which I think is when the fence originally went up, because their vehicles and what they towed went on the back end of it. It is a little hard to tell what exactly is proposed on this site, given the diagram. I understand
Another entrance over here now, too.
what they're requesting, and I
Right there.
understand the recommendation for the fence, but, and I see the building with the proposed addition and proposed water line, but, I mean, I'm not even sure where they're talking about storing materials, so.
I think that proposed addition already exists.
Right, that's what I'm saying, you look at this and but there's a proposed 3/4-inch water line, and they just said they wanna bring water back to it, so is that what they're going to use? I mean, I think that's the problem with this diagram right now, it's hard to tell
What's new and what's old,
what's new and what's old.
or what's
And
proposed.
you know, given the site and that it's been dirt, and I don't imagine I'm going to have a lot of problems with the use on this site, but it's very hard to tell exactly what's being proposed looking at this.
Jim?
Another note on the print, Brian, it says here that, on your report rather, conditions of approval, the property owner shall determine the number of average daily trips and submit a report. I don't know if we could accept, other than a traffic report, if a traffic report is required. Because we do require other applicants to provide traffic reports and not allow them to do their own traffic report.
You do realize that the road at the bottom of the plan is also the new intersection with the traffic light going to the Rite Aid pharmacy across the street. So there is
It's
traffic
signalized.
control adjacent to that site that they can get off and on. Jim?
We've identified a number of items that we typically would want on a plan, and I think where it's really a mixed-use lot, it's even more important to designate, for example, traffic flow on the site, and storage areas, particularly where, although it's a commercial zone, it's still a mixed use with residential behind, so I think upstream. So we need to be a little more sensitive to controlling the use. And the fact that the fences are in disrepair is evidence to me of why we need a current plan before us that shows what's there and what's going to be there that we're approving, so we don't look back at it 5 years from now and scratch our heads and say, what were those conditions that may or may not be followed? They should be shown on a plan. So I would move that we continue the acceptance of this until the applicant has submitted a plan that show the improvements and the existing structures.
Can we give some guidance to our planning director so that we can work with the applicant to assure us that that information is conveyed to us in the proper fashion? Jim?
Well, as several of you said, we need a plan that shows what's there, and we can't tell from looking at this because this was done some time ago with proposed. We want to see what's there now and what's going to be there for traffic, parking, fences, buildings, so we know what's on the site and what will be on the site. I think we're particularly interested in the fencing, the landscaping, and typically we require not just along the 10th Street, but we're requiring upgrade along Mast Road as part of our master plan, have typically required that.
And you were also saying that there should be some details as to the landscaping business or storage of materials and what and where.
Oh, yeah,
Plant materials or whatever.
well said.
I would hope we might sell plant materials and other stuff, because I need a couple trees.
Yeah, no, it's a great use, but
Yeah.
we just need to have it shown. And I would, just as our master plan requires, and we have required. There should be some upgrading of the landscaping, which is good advertising for them, along Mast Road, which currently it hasn't been, to my knowledge.
Would you, although they have a relatively long curb cut on Mast Road, since they have access on Patain Street and the street to the south, would you recommend any consolidation or somewhat limitation in terms of curb cuts on Mast Road for traffic reasons? And I'll ask Megan to comment on that too. Yes, Jim?
Well, I think your comment about the traffic light would partially inform that decision. If this is within the queuing area created by that traffic light, it seemed particularly appropriate to limit the access directly on Mast Road. But Megan can advise us better, but one of our goals is to move the access points off of Mast Road. I think this is a good opportunity to do that.
Megan?
That's nothing I had looked at today, but I absolutely can look at, the possibility of closing down some of that curb cut and still providing the right access. Like you said, a lot of it has to do with how the parking spaces are laid out and where the intent is to be able to pull in and pull out of those. So that was something Brian and I wanted to at least see was, maybe some striping, which would help us understand how the flow of traffic is intended. But we might be able to, talk with the owner about proposing some other bump outs to, not bump outs, but, to maybe, possibly still keep two openings for the two separate uses, or it depends. I haven't talked to the owner of the site, so we, if the idea is that it's not gonna be approved tonight, then Brian and I could set up a TRC meeting and go over some of these issues with them and, try and get a better feel for the use of the property and, trying to address some of those things.
Sooner than better.
Is there any members of public in the audience wishing to speak in reference to this
Public hearing.
proposal, application?
Well, no, this is just a completeness hearing.
I
This is a
I know, I'm
completeness
just
hearing.
asking if there's anybody else there.
We
But it's no
There
we
is.
didn't do it on the previous one.
Qualified.
We
I
don't
know.
normally,
Excuse me,
Can I,
I'm still the chairman.
Well, point of order, it wasn't done on the previous application. You either do it on all or none.
No,
no, but this was.
this one is a notice public hearing.
Oh, that's true, because it was noticed as being
Thank you.
accepted.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Thank
You're
you.
completely in order.
No. So my question is, does the board wish to hear from the applicant this evening? If so, we have to take and accept it under some condition in order to open a public
No.
hearing.
I think the consensus was,
No, but just as a point, can I
I'm just one member of the board here, so just trying to organize things. Jim?
To the extent we want to give the applicant guidance on concerns that we may have, if there are members of the public who in a very brief way can inform us of those, that may be useful for the applicant to take when they go back and do the plan. So I guess in the interest of efficiency, whereas Lee said at Gettysburg, we're here, the enemy is here, said at it, it would be an opportunity just to make sure, but I would want to limit that discussion because it's more in the nature of conceptual at this point, because we don't have a plan in front of us that we're acting on.
Well, the chair would try to be judicious, okay?
What's the
I've seen
next?
that he can be.
was the last application noticed?
No, that was a public hearing.
How do you know
It
it
was a
wasn't?
notice public hearing,
This one is, according to the
so
notes.
we have to do something.
Where'd you see that?
Where was it a notice public hearing?
Said, item 4 says, hold the public hearing as was noticed.
Well, I'm looking for the notice.
I got a letter,
You did? Okay.
that's why I'm here.
Well, but the abutters to the previous one got a letter too.
I'm not gonna,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I would have to probably discuss this with Patty, but I believe the process was that because it was a site plan amendment, it was something minor, and that, for that reason, we were going ahead and noticing it for the public hearing for a possible decision tonight.
Okay,
So that was the reason.
thank you.
Instead of a brand-new site plan where it would automatically be forwarded to another meeting.
Now that we have some more particulars here, what's the board's pleasure?
I would,
Jim.
if you wanna make this a motion or a request that, that we can, continue the acceptance, because we going to require that, the applicant provide us with a engineered plan, but that we allow the applicant to make a very short presentation on a conceptual basis. And since this is noticed as a public hearing, we allow interested parties to make very short comments, solely to alert us to issues that we want to be attentive to or look for information on the plan.
And
And
that's
I'll leave it to the chair's discretion on how to limit that time, knowing that there's a basketball game tonight, I think.
Do I have a second to
that I
that
really wanna
basketball
swatch.
motion? Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Barbara. Any discussion on that motion? Move the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Chair votes yes. Carries. I would like to hear from the applicant, if present, please. You have 5 minutes of our time.
Don't I just stick this plan up for her?
Okay.
We're on the ranking.
I did read some of the conditions that Mr. Rose had sent to me.
Name?
Could you state your name and address, please, for the record?
I'm Charles Paris. My business is at 578 Mass Road. I'm Bob Paris's son.
Okay.
And right now, there is fencing here, metal fencing and stockade that is pretty dilapidated. So I understand having all that stuff rejuvenated, putting up a stockade fence here. My understanding in talking to the potential tenant is that storage of the materials would only be contained in this fenced-in area. This would be just paved parking, which it currently is. The paving ends right where this fence is here, this divider. And him and I have spoken about landscaping and doing something with shrubs here. The last tenant was supposed to do something, and his idea of that was the crushed stone and a couple of flower, I shouldn't even say flowers, plastic. And nobody came down and complained, so I guess he was happy with that. We weren't. But the trailer that is over here, that's going to be removed. That's the old tenant. So basically, what is here now, when this guy comes in and starts his business, the cars, there are a couple cars back here. I would say it would be more of an improvement. In talking to him this evening, as far as traffic flow, most of his business is not retail people coming in. It's more a storage of bark mulch and crushed stone and so on and so forth that he hauls to locations where he does his own landscaping. So when I spoke to him tonight regarding traffic flow, he said you wouldn't see any more traffic flow than you would see with the car sales that have been there for a number of years. Yes. Thank you.
Members of the board have any questions of the applicant? Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak in reference to this project? Yes, sir. State your name, please.
How you doing? Bill Wynn, Storage, Goffstown. I'm all for creating new business, and I just wanted to make it from an abutter's point of view, from the residential aspect of things. The back of the townhouse that I own is right here, okay? So my concerns are new noise. Dead cars don't make any noise, okay? So that's a concern to me, which borders the material change in use issue. And at the same time, when you can put up a stockade fence for 6 feet, I'm this tall, but I know there's gonna be loaders in there, there's gonna be fuel smells and things like that, there's gonna be trucks coming in and out. I have some concerns over that. One of the other things I'd like the board to consider in their decision-making process of this particular site plan issue is the hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., no deliveries. That's fine. However, it's not just deliveries. When are they gonna be open? How early? How late? How late can I sleep on Saturday? And can I still get up and go to 10 o'clock mass instead of 8 o'clock mass? That's the difference on Sunday, because of the noise. If the noise is gonna wake me up on Sunday, I may as well go to church early. So the other issues I have with regard to traffic, the present business that is no longer there had to do with car sales. The reason, when you talk about traffic flow in and out of the lot, there wasn't much. That's why he's not there anymore. So we weren't impacted by any noise over there, except when they were working later at night, fixing cars outside and things like that. We live with that. And my concern is primarily the noise. I don't see what you can do to Mass Road to alter the traffic coming in and out of Patine Street. I don't see an object there. I also don't feel a traffic study is necessary. Why? Because I don't think the traffic down Mass Road is gonna make a bit of difference if we get 50 more cars coming into Patine Street than we do today. What I am concerned about is what kind of noise that's gonna generate, and what will the traffic flow be on the property for the business. I think having the developer come in with a traffic study is just a waste of money. But I would think there would be a very strong investment in knowing how the traffic is gonna flow on the lot. So I would appreciate the board to take a look at that. That's pretty much it. I think we're dealing with issues having to do with, is this significant material change in use with some of the matters that I brought up, specifically speaking to the residential abutting matters here. And thank you very much, board. Good to see you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Members of the board?
Chair?
Yes, Tim?
The applicant made a statement that it was not going to be a retail yard, so I think that's important to make note of sooner or later in this. Because if it's not gonna be a retail yard, then you're not gonna have the traffic issues. If it's only gonna be for the tenant's own use, it's a different situation than if it was a retail yard.
When you hear
Well-
landscaping business, any restrictions on, can we advise the applicant in terms of hours of operation that we'd be concerned about, or any of those other things like noise that were brought up? Barbara?
Well, just to Tim's point, I don't think I heard the applicant say it was going to be solely commercial operation of the landscaper. I think I heard it was gonna be primarily. Pretty much, most landscapers I'm aware of allow retail purchases, it's just not their main thing. So I think that's gonna have to be considered in the application in regards to hours of operation when we review the plan as to what we're talking about.
I would think any business would sell to me, Mr. Private
Right.
Joe, if I came in and wanted a couple yards of bark mulch. I don't think I'd hesitate to sell it to me. And I would certainly encourage coming to some of those things myself.
I thought you just wanted trees.
I'll take, my wife will take anything for the house. Lowell, you have any
Sounds like a
comments?
bribe.
Yeah, I think all these different comments we've been making kind of demonstrate why we do need a plan.
Is it safe to say that the members of the board are, and I would want a motion to this effect, I believe.
I think we have a motion on the floor.
Motion on the floor.
We do?
Yep.
Of what?
The motion was to continue the acceptance hearing until the applicant brings forward a new plan. Is
Oh,
that
we
right, Jim?
voted on that,
No.
didn't we?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, we never voted on it, and I seconded it.
I lost track.
Well, that's what it was, I
Any
think.
discussion on that motion then, if it's on the floor? Jim?
Well, I guess the question, I don't know, Mr. Paris knows is when, if we should continue with this to a date certain, or for date uncertain to be renoticed, because apparently it's probably the tenant that's gonna do the plan. Hate to pick a date and then pick wrong. If we could ask maybe the applicant for some,
Well, the staff has recommended a TRC where they can help the applicant with the particulars in terms of this site plan. Basically, I don't think it has to be, speaking as the chair, not as the chair, but as a member of the board, that it has to be anything more than taking this particular plan and eliminating the information that's no longer pertinent, or things that have already been done, but also add some detail as to what happens where in terms of the proposed landscaping business area, along with some of the other details that were asked about. But he has to talk to his potential tenant about hours of operation, which will have to be presented and approved by the board. If it's gonna be retail and commercial, which is about what it sounds like. It's still a commercial use, but
Right.
it's John Q. Public, and also I have a business where I go do work at people's homes and businesses. I'm assuming. I wanna assume wrong.
Mr.
Ryan?
Chair, might it be more prudent to change the motion to not accept the plan, and then you don't have to continue to another date? And that way, you could just recommend that the applicant move forward and create the plan and come back to the town with the materials requested, and not have the additional fee as was done on a previous, I think we did that on a previous meeting.
And waive the fees?
Well, we waive the application fee, but not the notice fees.
Yeah, gotta renotice then.
Yeah, but there aren't that many abutters, it looks like, so I guess that's not.
We should ask the applicant what they wanna
Sort of
do.
looking at the applicant to
Why don't
see
we
if
ask
I
the
can get a
applicant what
drift
they would
of
prefer
what he
us to
wants
do.
Mr. Paris,
I'm
you have 2 seconds.
I'm not quite
Yes
sure
or no?
if I understand
Yeah, I don't think
truthfully
he is either.
Yeah.
That was my guess.
what the question is.
Right.
Do you want me to
Right.
restate?
Yes.
The motion currently on the floor is to continue acceptance, meaning they would not make a decision tonight on whether or not to accept it, but they have to decide whether or not to forward it to a date specific or to just forward it to some future date unknown, where we would have to renotice it anyway. If they forward it to a date specific, we don't have to renotice the hearing. My suggestion was to change that motion to potentially not, just not accept, make the decision to not accept this application as a complete application until you bring forward a plan that, could be reviewed, and whatever other items that they are requesting, so that, that way they can make a decision on the next time, pending all the application submittal items are received, that they could accept the plan for review and go forward with discussion.
Couldn't we do the specific date, try to get those materials together prior to that specific date, so we don't have to renotice?
Right.
And then not take a chance of losing the tenant, the potential tenant?
That's an option as well. It
Oh.
just,
Got a comment?
Yeah, I would suggest, since it was already noticed to be heard here tonight, it hasn't been noticed to be heard like at the next meeting. So I don't see why we couldn't do like he's suggesting, if we wanna move it out a month or 2 months, whatever he thinks is appropriate. Because there isn't a noticed date out there that would be in conflict at this point yet.
I'm gonna ask a question, the chair's asking a question. Megan, how soon can we have a TRC with the client, applicant?
No, right away. You can have next Tuesday or Monday.
All right, and how long would it take to modify a plan, Mr. Harris?
Modify the plan?
Yes.
If it's something that has to be done professionally, I'm not sure. I would probably contact Mr. Dahlberg again and see if he could do that for us. If it's something that we could do and just show where the stockade fence would go, what would be repaired,
No.
what is currently paved, where the
No.
materials would be stored.
I think you're gonna have to talk
Um,
to Mr. Dahlberg.
Nope.
Yes.
Then it's something that could be done pretty quickly. And my only concern is that if the specific date is out 2 months, this tenant's probably not gonna be able to stick around for 2 months.
Just as clarification, I think we're looking at our schedule, and I think we're probably looking at like a July 8th date. We have a big opening, but that means your tenant would have to contact Mr. Dahlberg. There'd have to be something put together, and you'd need to meet with TRC, and today is the 10th.
Megan?
I was just gonna state, if there's a plan that exists already and Dahlberg happens to have this information, I think it can be turned around quicker than if there was no plan at all and we had a
Right.
sketch and we had to send someone out to do surveys.
Sure.
So I think July 8th would provide enough time. We could have a TRC meeting, early next week with the applicant and possibly Dahlberg if they want him there, just to discuss these things quickly, maybe make a few sketches on the old plan, then Dahlberg or whoever it is that he hires can do that work and, you know, submit it before the required deadline. But I think with having an existing site plan, if they have it digitally, I think you should be able to make those
This
changes.
is hand-drawn.
Is that?
What do you think, Tim? 89 plan?
Well, but you can scan it and
He's
digitize
got
it, you can
something up on
digitize it pretty quickly. Again, the point is, do you have to go out as a surveyor and resurvey everything, or can you
No.
digitize it?
No.
You can use
No,
what's
We
there.
don't need that, we just need it.
I think if it could be digitized, you know, white out some of the stuff and add the new notes, that shouldn't be too bad for them to do.
James.
I then move that we continue this, we do not accept, we continue the acceptance hearing with the applicant's consent to July, whatever that date was, 8th. And invite the applicant to hold a TRC, but that we also notice it for hearing on that date, so we can proceed to review the plan. Since we already have seen it conceptually, I think we're ready to do it then.
Is there a second to that
Second.
reconsideration?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Any discussion on that
Does not
motion?
require renoticing, right?
There's no, we're doing it to a date certain, so.
To a date certain.
Right, so it does not have to be renoticed, okay?
Does not have to be renoticed.
Okay.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. I hope work with Megan and the town planner, Mr. Paris, and hope to see you in as quickly as possible. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Item number 3 is a completeness review, final subdivision review hearing for a proposed lot line adjustment, Town of Goffstown and Kilton and Joanna Barnard Trust, Elm Street, Center Street, and Henry Bridge Road, zone agricultural. I'm assuming, Megan, you're representing the applicant, and
Sue DeRusso's here also to speak.
and Brian's, excuse me, Megan?
Sue DeRusso,
I
town
know she's
administrator,
back
is
there. I
also
don't-
here to speak.
Only if needed.
Yeah, she said she didn't want to speak.
I did,
Brian, you have the floor.
I did put some PowerPoint together again for this one, so,
Less time doing that.
we'll go with that. This is the Barnard property along Henry Bridge Road and Elm Street / Center Street, and also the town of Goffstown property. And the proposal is to do a lot line adjustment between the two. Currently, as you can see, there's a line that goes basically through the middle of the two properties, if you look at them together. The proposal is to put most of the property on the right onto the town's property. You can see how that, it's sort of dark on this picture, but you can see how that lot line adjustment would be with this new diagram. The remaining portion, which I'll go back to the other slide, you can see it a little easier. On the very right-hand side, you can see two very small lots, and then a little piece of land that's all pink. That land would all be remaining with the Barnards, and then the rest of the property would be given to the town through a purchase and sales agreement.
Result of the vote, the town vote?
This
It's not town owned.
this was, I can see Tim is kind of asking a question about whether or not it was a town vote. It did go on the ballot for the town to purchase it. The town has formalized the agreement, however, it just has gone forward yet because we need to formalize this lot line adjustment first and get that recorded, and then the purchase and sales agreement can go forward and be finalized as well. So the request is to move 24.13 acres from map 5 lot 39 to map 5 lot 24, which is the town's property, and then to combine map 5 lots 27-9, 27-10 with map 5 lot 39, the remaining portion of map 5 lot 39. This is the plat I'm not gonna spend much time on this. We did have some very minor changes at the very end, and I'll let Megan address those. But basically, the request was to have the lot line follow, I think it's called Henry Brook, is it Henry Brook? Harry Brook, rather than a lot line which was just on the other side of Harry Brook, which would have been an unuseful piece of sliver of land. So it's gonna go through the center of Harry Brook, and so that had to be revised. And so I believe that's what you have on your table tonight, but it's not what was given to you in your packet on the smaller version. So the one on the table is the updated version, basically. This is just the rest of the plat. This shows the topography on the site,
Doesn't make sense.
and the key considerations, this is a lot line adjustment only. There's no new development proposed. Again, as I stated, the town has a purchase and sales agreement with the Barnards for the portion to be included on the town property. And then the town voters did vote to purchase this lot at the elections in March 2010. There's some more key considerations. The property is zoned conservancy, and I believe it also has another zone on there, agricultural. Wait, I believe it's actually agricultural. Let me go back to the zoning map, just to make sure I'm right on that.
Used to be commercial.
Oh, it's residential, I'm sorry. It's agricultural, most of it, and then the portion that's gonna remain with the Barnards is residential. Okay. And again, as I stated, that they wanted the lot lines to follow the brook, and so there was some last minute changes on that.
Are we creating a new lot?
So staff recommends that the board find that the lot line adjustment does not have a regional impact, that the board accept the site plan for review. This one was also noticed for a public hearing tonight. The town is trying to work on getting this purchase and sales agreement finished, hopefully by the end of July. I might stand corrected by somebody else here if that's incorrect. And then to hold the public hearing and consider the plan tonight, as was noticed, and approve the lot line adjustment, subject to the conditions as listed in the staff report. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Members of the board, items 1 and 2.
Mr. Chair, I move that we find that the site plan does, it's not site plan, it's lot line, am I reading the right one? Lot line adjustment plan does not have a regional impact, and we accept it, find that it's complete and accept it for review.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Phil. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Chair votes yes also. I'll hear from the applicant at this time, which was being represented by Megan Theriot.
I don't know if it's easier to put this one up higher. This is the plan that you originally got, so I just wanted to explain that versus the new one, so I'm not confusing everyone too much, so. You had some plans, I actually had it put all on one sheet just to make it easy, but the plan set you got originally, had some lot lines that we adjusted. So the small set you have in your plan should be, adjusted, but, this is the DPW parcel over here. I believe this is the Perry land that, we originally acquired a while back before me.
Right.
And now, this is the section of land, of the Barnards that, we're looking to add to our land. I spoke with the Barnards and, they had decided to consolidate their remaining lots. The lot lines, you see what's called tract lines, it's based on some of the old deeds. It's really hard to actually define the tract lines because they're based on some of the old dams and the ponds that used to exist that don't exist anymore. So they're here more for kind of reference approximate, and I believe they were taken from Dahlberg off of the Bob Todd plan that was done in 2007, 2004 or 7. So that's where those came from. Those are the tract lines that would be discontinued. That's a note that didn't get on the plan, so we'd have to add that to say tract lines to be discontinued. But the remaining lot would be right here. So let me just show you on the newer plan. This zooms in to just, the orange is the section that would be added to the DPW lot, and the blue is the remaining parcel for the Barnards. So 6.53 acres would be their remaining consolidated lot. I believe the zone line does cut through the parcel a little bit, so it would be mostly residential, and there's a small portion that would be agricultural. And then the remaining, the parcel that is added to the town lot is 24.6 acres. I think that's it, it's pretty basic. So I apologize for the confusion in the plans, it was just a misinterpretation. So I believe what we had, Brian and I had put together some approval conditions based on the original plan that you had gotten, several of which have already been addressed, but they could remain as approval conditions. And I believe that was one, to shift the lot line from the top of banking to the center line of the brook, to add a note to remove the, discontinue the tract lines. And there was also a note to adjust the acreage, which has been done on the new plan. What else we had on there? The wetlands, adding a note, because that's a prime wetland right there. So we had to add a note that it is a prime wetland with the prime wetland buffer. I just actually got the prime wetlands mapping from our town, and what I was gonna do is have Dahlberg just bring that in to make sure, to compare it to the wetlands that were delineated a while back through the Bob Todd survey that was done. So they were delineated. It looked like on the Bob Todd plan, I think they were delineated back in it was a while ago, but then it referenced two different things, so, it said back in 1987, but then it sounds like they were looked at again in 2004 possibly, based on the soils. So what I was gonna do is take our prime wetlands mapping and load that in to see how that compared, to the wetlands that are on here. And we could adjust that if necessary.
Now, would that also be, Megan, on both parcels, including the existing town property?
The prime wetlands, you mean?
Yes, because I think it goes further up.
The prime wetlands are all right in here.
So, but does it extend onto the first purchase that the town made?
piece?
Yes.
I don't believe it does, but, I mean, it's right near the edge. The buffer would, yes.
Okay, I think,
And we could have Dahlberg show that buffer if you'd like on.
The town line does
Sustain.
not go up to the brook, it's in the buffer.
I think the buffer should be
If you'd like
shown.
the buffer over here also.
Yeah, I think so,
That
because in the future, we don't want any question about what is the buffer and what isn't the buffer on any of the property that the town owns. Okay? Members of the board, any questions for Megan?
There's nothing
Yes,
changing
no.
structure-wise, right?
No, on any of this land, no. No, the town would be back in front of you when we were ready to do any excavation, similar to the plan that you had earlier.
Barn looks good, though, Mr. Barnard's got going on out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's the only structure, which is on here, actually.
Yeah.
The barn, so.
Other members of the board? And I'm gonna open it up as a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak in reference to this application? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the lot line adjustment and consolidation plan with conditions 1 through 5 to the extent not previously made to the plan, and as condition 6, that the track lines be discontinued or noted somehow if Mr. Dahlberg convinces us that they should remain as historical information. Number 7, that the prime wetlands buffer be shown on both the existing land and the town's land to which it will be consolidated, or with which it will be consolidated.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Phil. Any discussion on the motion?
We leave out.
I'll move the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
It was in there.
Thank you.
Old track lines to be removed.
Mr. Barnett, when are you gonna have that barn all finished?
Oh, as soon as the fellow, gets back from, Ware and decides he wants to continue. Anytime, he's all right, so.
All right, thank you.
Could I just say one thing to the board? I think the important reason why the town is going to own this property is because they have the only good access. That's the basic reason. Otherwise, you have no access to that property.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Moving on to old business. Map 4, Lot 15 and 15-1. Final subdivision review hearing for a proposed lot line adjustment. Donald and Ruth Normando, Mountain Road Zone Conservancy, Conservation and Open Space District. Brian.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, this is the Normando property. It's a lot line adjustment. This was just on your agenda 2 weeks ago. However, I'll just go really briefly through it. It's on Mountain Road and Lesnick Road, just south of Lesnick Road. This is an aerial of the property. The request is to approve the lot line adjustment between the two lots, map 4, lots 15 and 15-1. This is the plat. The lot line adjustment is supposed to follow an existing tree line that is on the property between the two fields. This is the second page of the plat. And basically, as I already stated last week, or a couple weeks ago, it's a lot line adjustment only. There's no new development proposed. There were several waivers that had been given by the board, and so mainly for not having to do wetlands and topo and things like that, since there's no new development proposed. Both lots currently have a house built on them. Both new lots will still have a house based on the new layout. The property is not within any close distance, not within 100 feet of a prime wetland. As I stated last meeting, the board waived A through E as defined in the report. Found that the subdivision does not have a regional impact, accepted the application is complete, and continued to this meeting. Staff recommends that the board hear the applicant's presentation, open the public hearing and hear the public, discuss and resolve any remaining issues, and approve the lot line adjustment, subject to the conditions 1 through 5 as listed in the staff report. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Is there someone here representing the applicant? Please, you have the floor.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Tim Bernier, here at Bernier Incorporated. We prepared the plans for Don. Don Normando is also here, the owner of the property. Brian did a great job explaining it. It's pretty straightforward. The only purpose of the lot line adjustment is to make the property line make more sense with the land. There's two fields out there, and the way the houses use the field and view the field, the existing line sort of meandered through one of the fields, and it really didn't make any sense. So, as Don is trying to get his estate worked out and things settled, he realized that the line as it existed just doesn't make any sense with the land. So the whole purpose of this is just to have it run down a natural break in the land between the two lots. So that's it. Be happy to answer any questions.
Why don't you pull up a chair and sit down and join us for a second or two? Members of the board, any questions for Mr. Bernier? Hearing none, I'll open a public hearing. Any members of the public left out there that would like to?
I warmed the chair up.
Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Members of the board,
What time does that basketball game start?
soon.
On that note, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the lot line adjustment application as proposed with the conditions 1 through 4 as conditions precedent, and condition 5 is condition subsequent, well, it's a condition still to final approval, which is state approval of the subdivision. Do we need that where it's more than 5 acres? I don't think so.
I don't think, this is a lot line revision anyways, it's not a subdivision.
Right. There are no state approvals.
I don't think it's required.
So as applicable would be none.
Yeah, well, I think we, unless required, I'd say, yeah, we can leave it on as applicable, but I don't think there is any.
Do I hear a second to Jim's motion? We fighting over there? Which one of you
Seconds
gentlemen
all
wants
over
it?
the house.
We have more seconds than we need. Seconded by Lowell. Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Chair votes yes. Unanimous. Approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. Members of the board,
Mr. Chair?
any other items of business you wish to bring before the board this evening?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Tim?
And under the correspondence and FYI on page 2, there's a copy of a letter, noted C. Is that letter's not in our packet. Where is that letter?
Are you referring to a copy
That's
of?
in our packet.
Could we get a copy of that letter, please?
I have it circled on my correspondence list here. Brian, can you give us a heads up, who, what, where, and why?
Mr. Chair, I have not had a chance to actually read that letter yet, so I'll have to defer that information till the next time, I guess.
So can you include it in our packet
Yeah,
for
say,
next time?
can I make
I-
a request that we get that letter?
I was assuming that it was gonna be there, but, yeah, that, Patty had put it in the packet as a correspondence item. She was the one who had received it, and, so I have not
normally
had a
don't
chance
do
yet to.
So we don't know who it's from or who made the
Well,
complaint?
it's from the DES, I believe,
But it was
from DES regarding Fournier, and I believe it's supposed to be addressing whether or not they have determined if the Fournier property has wetlands that have been altered.
Mr.
But
Chair?
I'm not sure if that's
Yes, Tim.
really the case.
Could we get this included in our packet when we are going to have our next hearing on that matter, rather than get it and then it gets lost and then I don't remember to bring it with me the next time we actually have a hearing?
Yeah, which is the next meeting.
It is the next meeting?
Right.
Yes.
But I thought it was supposed to be,
Well, there might be.
now this
The
requesting till July 22nd, it says right on the
Okay.
June 24th thing there.
Fourniers have requested an extension.
Can we discuss that for a minute, because,
Yes.
Thank you. Or at least one of the abutters was planning to have his own experts up here. And I don't want him to incur that cost if the applicant is only gonna drag this out further. And on that note, it seems to me that this is a matter where we believe a property is not in compliance and we keep getting it continued by the applicant. At some point, I think we should say, no, you've had enough time, we wanna hear this. And it'd be different if the abutter were in agreement, the other interested parties, but just simply to keep continuing this at the applicant's request, where it seems to be a problem created by the applicant, I think might be inappropriate.
So the applicant give a reason?
Our agenda says may be requesting to be continued to July 22nd. Based upon the discussion, I would hope that Brian would tell him that the chances of his extension being considered are slim to none.
Well, I mean, I guess I need to ask why. Are we gonna change our policy on this? Because I don't know why people on this board would even know that people are bringing experts into the public hearing. So, and I'm not disputing that people may or may not, but, you know, I understand that what's before the board, and I understand the board's interest in it. I didn't go on the site walk. I was on crutches at the time, thankfully, because it was
That's
a
all right. We
miserable
couldn't have
day.
had a
It
wheelchair
was a
either.
miserable day, as I recall.
People excuses, but we'll accept it.
You know, so, you know, usually this board takes continuances, requests, and, you know, we just move on. So it's not that I think this should be drug out all the time, but if an applicant doesn't have what they want, that we ask them to do, or they haven't gotten it together, we routinely grant those requests. So we need to come up with some sort of process to follow if that's gonna be an issue.
Phil?
Yeah, well, I'd like to remind the board too, that the reason that the applicant requested an extension the last time was that at the sidewalk, it was requested by a member of this board for him to do additional site, test pits, which he had to do, and that's noted in our minutes, and from the information from our planner to us about the last minute, as a reason for the request, was so that he could have his guys, engineers, do those site pits, those test pits that were requested of him at the sidewalk.
Could be. Dan noted.
Two points. One, in answer to Barbara's question, how do we know? The applicant has told at least me, and I think others, that, not the applicant, the abutter, that he plans to have experts.
Well, not at a public
Or-
meeting, because I haven't.
I'm not aware of that.
Excuse me.
I'm just telling you.
The site walk was a public meeting. It was recorded, and there was a quorum of the board there, present.
And second, in answer to Barbara's question on why would we continue others but not this, typically, the applicant is not making use of the property so that the continuance doesn't benefit the applicant. In this case, there is a substantial question about whether the applicant is operating legally, because he's operating without any approval from this board, so that the applicant is benefited by the delay. So I think we can look at this in a different way. And there is at least some evidence from abutters that they're being harmed by the continuation of that possibly illegal operation. So I think we can treat this differently from our typical sort of casual approach, which we get chastised for regularly by Barbara.
But in reference to this, I happened to see this note, and I happened to dig out my zoning ordinance this evening, and I happened to read paragraph 5.113, or 5.13. It calls landscaping business in the agricultural district. And there's like 4 specific criteria in there.
But we're talking about continuances.
I know, but
Okay.
I want everybody to read this, because I want to be educated by
5 what?
5.13.
No, I don't see a 513.
In your zoning ordinance?
All right, so the applicant apparently needs to be spoken to know that not appearing at the next
28.
hearing might be at his own risk.
Mr. Chair, if I might add.
Oh, 5.13,
Yes,
not 5.1.3.
excuse me.
If I might add something, Mr. Chair. The request, I believe, has come forth just because the applicant has provided some scientific work on the property, the test pits that were dug on the property. And then the abutter has also hired their scientists and done tests on the abutting properties. And both of the two studies are somewhat conflicting with each other. And so, and they're both done by wetland scientists. And so we're hoping that the DES can sort of solve this argument, if you will, by giving their opinion of what, which is potentially more of a neutral opinion, rather than someone that's been hired by the applicant or the abutter, to give us an answer as to what they think really happened with, if there were any existing wetlands on the property. My inclination would be to not make a decision on this until the DES gives us an answer. But I would just kind of, I guess, give you that point of information and leave it in your hands to decide.
I would think in the past, we've had conflicting opinions from various sources before, and we basically said, since you two can't agree, we'll hire a third one at your expense to give us the answer. And so waiting for DES is not a solution as far as I'm concerned. Jim?
Well, we can always decide to do that after we hear the presentations, but there are other issues here, including the points that you just raised in the zoning ordinance, that we may never even get to the environmental issue. And I think we could have that presented to us and then continue this for further studies
As might be required. Okay.
I would rather get on with it, and frankly, once we get into the summer, we get into vacation season. Some of us do occasionally take vacations. Others of us just show up late all the time.
Then we also got CIP season too.
That's true.
Cancel vacations.
But that's not a motion.
But after
All right,
reading,
so-
but after reading this paragraph, I begin to see some very strange problems arising.
Okay, well,
So,
we started out with a request for the letter, and if we could get the letter when we get our next,
that's correct.
when we have our next meeting date, it'd be nice, because then it will be in front of us for the meeting. Is that all right with you, Barbara? Or do you want yours
And I
early?
think you'll find, Brian, it might be the consensus of the board, if I speak wrong, I'll stand corrected,
I'll lose mine.
that we may not entertain a request for continuance, and we want to hear the deal on the 24th. Hell or high water.
All right, can I, two other things. One,
Sure.
as
You
we
have
have.
the floor for this.
We missed our
I
8:30 break.
got you 10 minutes here.
All right, I'll do it in
Oh,
less than
Southern
10.
Hampshire
But
Planning,
before
sorry.
we do that,
Yeah.
do you have it on the computer, Brian? Can
I
you
have
look?
to actually go download it off mine, so if I can sneak out for a few minutes if you
Only,
wanna talk
only if
for
you're gonna get
2
everybody
minutes.
out of here in time for 5
Why don't we just go through the packet? We have it in our packet.
Well, because if we go through the packet, we're not gonna get done in less than an hour. But the first thing I'd like to do, when even Brian said of the room, is by consensus, direct the planning department to buy a pointer for Brian, so that when we're looking at
Second.
these
Yeah,
things,
second.
and we can see, does everybody agree? Excellent. That's my motion, it's been seconded.
Yes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay,
We'll have a pointer next week.
all right. It's hard
Thank
Oh,
you.
I gotta check on the
Are you
budget.
here for the housing?
Who seconded that?
Yes. Thank you very much, Megan. Everybody.
All right, well,
Night, Meg.
while Brian is downloading it, there had been some discussion previously about knowing what Southern New Hampshire Planning is doing. I'll give a brief summary. One of the things that Southern New Hampshire has been working on is this housing needs assessment that you all got in your packet. The issue with this is, a planning commission is required by statute 3747-2 to prepare a housing needs analysis for communities every 5 years. That last one was done in 2005. So it was time for an update, so Southern New Hampshire Planning undertook that for its member communities. Since then, effective this past January, RSA 574-59 was enacted, and that is the statute that provides, and I'm not quoting exactly, adequate affordable housing opportunities shall exist in every community. That is a bill that has been in front of the legislature for years. This past session, it actually got enacted. There's significant discussion among the communities about what the impact is, because the statute provides no direction as to what adequate affordable housing is, what an adequate opportunity for it would be, and how you would determine it. There's absolutely no direction in it, and there's also some concern on communities that essentially it could potentially usurp zoning by virtue of saying the statute requires you to have this, and there's some fear in the communities that it's going to be used and basically void any zoning requirements. It is a fairly significant area. Hooksett is already the subject of 2 lawsuits. in regards to it. So in any case, the housing needs assessment needed to be done, and there was some discussion on the committee that put it together, that worked on it with staff, that there would be an attempt to put some sort of a methodology in it in regards to an affordable housing analysis. In conjunction with the report, what happened was there was some data compiled, and Bruce Mayberry was retained by the Planning Commission to do the initial data work that was used as a basis for the report. Jillian Harris, as you can see on that slide, was the planner who put it primarily together. She did a lot of work. The actual plan itself that you were provided has 5 sections with various appendices in it. And if you go to the next slide, Brian, thank you. One of the things that Bruce Mayberry was retained to do was to do some household projections. And so there was a demographic model put together in regards to the area, in regards to what the household populations were. And it's like anything, you can see various bubbles moving through, and with, various a bubble in sort of the younger age bracket in 2015, whereas the 65 and older bracket continues to get larger in the area, which is fairly consistent with what's expected within New Hampshire. So that was one of the projections that was done by Bruce Mayberry based on various census data in regards to a projection that was used in it. There was also a housing production needs. Brian, if you can go to the next slide. There were various sources of data had to be gone to for this. Tony Martz was on this committee. He actually suggested using some Federal Reserve data out of Boston because that had rental data. Generally speaking, New Hampshire Housing Finance had the best data in the area. There was much discussion about the employment growth rate to be used. You'll look on this at the employment growth rate for 2000 to 2008 was estimated at 0.74. That, in fact, was what the committee used for its projections. Bruce actually came up with a suggested employment growth rate of over 1.4%. The committee, after looking at it, felt that the 2000 to 2008 numbers are actually a little skewed as to the early 2000 to 2004, where there still was some growth. So in the projections that were ultimately done, the 0.74 was used. You see here also a breakout between owners and rentals. This was provided based on percentages. This is not, and there are various qualifications that you'll see in the report, it's not particularly good data on a projection basis. It, quite frankly, is just not kept. It's not accumulated on a town basis. It's not accumulated on a state basis. There was some discussion about the ability to do it in Massachusetts. One of the reasons it's a difference in Massachusetts is in Massachusetts, rent is tax deductible on your state tax return. So there's fairly good data in Massachusetts about rental units and what percentage of the population is renting. It is not data that's easily available for New Hampshire. If you go to the next, Table 9, Bruce Mayberry Planning then developed an income projection by tenure and housing projecting a housing cost burden estimate, doing then homeowners by income range, and then dividing that into your housing cost as a percentage of income. He then broke it out between owners and renters. Again, that data, much of it is extrapolated, and from a community standpoint, as the various member communities of Southern New Hampshire look at it, it may or may not be applicable. You will note at the bottom there's a workforce income. And basically, the proposition that's going forward is that this workforce affordable housing income is sort of it's a 50% ratio that they're going for. Again, there's no real guidance in regards to it, but that was sort of taken as what would be appropriate for a breakout in regards to looking at things.
On this table here, what is
Yeah.
all these, the first column's all referring to the AMFI, what is that?
Average, medium,
Median
family income.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I didn't say it was a country anywhere or anything, everybody got the acronym. Excellent. All right, the next major component of this report was a look at the existing housing supply. Once Bruce had done this data, Southern New Hampshire then went to look in the next chart, Brian, if you don't mind. The existing housing supply was looked at for the member communities in regards to the data, which was looked at, and we looked at census data, at Southern New Hampshire data, and state data. And we found some variations in regards to the reports by communities, and we ultimately ended up using housing unit data as reported to the state. Each community files with the state on an annual basis a report of permits and housing. Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission collects that information for each community, but it turns out we found that there's some variation on what the communities are reporting internally. So it was decided by the committee to go with the housing as reported with the state. You can see the numbers over the covered period, reflecting a 10% increase during the 1990s, and then approximately a 10% increase from 2000 to 2008. And again, that's something that the committee putting this together considered, because while 2000 to 2008 looks sort of like same percentage-wise, it's clearly a trend that's going the opposite direction from 1990. If you recall the late 80s, early 90s, there was sort of a housing bust here in New Hampshire, and then we're seeing it again much more dramatically, which is why some of the projections, when Bruce looked at the historical projections, the committee putting this together said, no, that historical rate is going the wrong way. We want a lower number as we go forward.
But they are going up in some communities, though.
But that's yes.
Like the bottom three, Ware, Raymond, and New Boston all show up an increase in percentage from the 90s into the 2000s.
Right, technically, there's an increase in all the communities.
But Goffstown shows a decrease. If you look at Goffstown, went from 15% to 10%.
There might be a decrease in the percentage increase, but from 2000 to 2008, there's still a percentage increase.
Okay.
And again, permits issued over the last year certainly don't support that kind of an increase, but if you go back to 2000, you're going to see it. Then there was a housing demand and projection analysis done on the next slide, Brian. And again, this was extrapolated using the data that we had in the 2000 US Census. There was a look at various projections. You can see on this chart, BCM is the Bruce Mayberry consulting work that was done. There were a couple of projection methods used. You can see as a percentage, the net change was not significant, and the average based on the projections was what was going forward with. The next section, housing costs and affordability, as I said, not only a housing needs analysis, but there was a decision to try and look at affordability issues in light of the new statute. For the region, the median purchase price was $236,000 with a rental, and again, we're not making any representation that this rental is based on data, percentages, projection. We do not have specific community information. Would then be 971, and then based on percentages, using the 30% of income as being an affordable housing cost, the household projections in regards to both homeowners and renters paying more than that percent were devised. 30% is sort of a standard percentage. I'm not sure that a lot of people would agree that that's what people are actually doing for housing costs or have done for some time, but again, that's the data that tends to get used by HUD and other finance agencies. In connection with looking at this, there is another slide, Brian, just basically in regards to looking at the local housing needs, things that need to be considered in regards to it are the land use development regulation. Again, that's that local zoning that I talked about, that may be in conflict or conflicting with demands made by the new statute. And there are rental assistance programs and home ownership programs that can be used to help to meet those local housing needs. What ultimately ended up happening, and if you go to your packet and you actually get yourself through this packet, at the end, and this is the last chart in the package, was a projection for estimated workforce housing need, affordable housing. We've sort of seen a migration of what you call it. What you're looking up in front of you is a summary, but if you look at the various communities, what was done was it was looked at a regional basis, and each community actually from Housing Finance is put into particular HUD finance areas. For example, Goffstown is in the Manchester area, which is not unexpected. Bedford is in the Manchester area, whereas Auburn is considered more of the western Rockingham area. And what that does is it impacts the median income that is projected for your community. So, for example, in the Manchester area, which Goffstown is in, the median income is projected at $76,000, as compared to, say, western Rockingham, which, based on the communities there, HMFA estimate income is $90,000. Based on the 30% percentage, then there's a calculation for what the maximum monthly payment is. There's a medium income then, and available for both homeowners and renters. And based on household data, there was a 2008 estimated workforce housing or affordable housing need, and a 2015 projected number, again, based on that, a combination of demographic increase and employment increases to give a net increase in need from 2008 to 2015. There were some income limit calculations that you'll see, and there are a number of qualifications. If you look at the executive summary and the end of your report in regards to what to consider when looking at the distribution of what was referred to by the committee as local fair share. I will tell you that this generated a significant amount of discussion at our last meeting. And I have asked for written communities from the written comments from the member communities in regards to this housing needs assessment. Quite honestly, in 2005, a very similar report was done with projected housing needs that generated a lot of discussion with the new statute, which people really are not sure how it's going to come into play with applications. There's a lot of local concern in regards to any indication of projected need and numbers. As I said, there are a number of things in this report that would vary from community to community. There might be some good data that you have in regards to median income that indicates it's different than what your area is under HUD. You might have data in regards to rental available to you locally that is not available otherwise. And there are a number of other factors that might come into why, when you look at it for your community, this final chart with the local fair share affordable housing projections would be modified. So we have asked for comments. If people have them, this has been distributed to all of the planning boards in our 13-town community planning area. It will be getting addressed at our next meeting, our next executive committee meeting, and being brought forward to the full commission in regards to adoption of this report. It has been prepared to comply with the statute in accordance with the 5-year update, and it has made an attempt to address the new statute to allow communities to have some basis going forward if it becomes an issue to make a determination as to how to proceed. There is no requirement that a town meet the standard as proposed in this report, as far as we know, but again, the statute was pretty vague. But the commission tried to use the data that it was able to compile, used the projections from Bruce Mayberry, and did what it could in regards to a projection. So that was the housing needs assessment for 2010. And you can all go back to the basketball game and read this, during commercials and.
I already did, so I'm not gonna read it again.
Tim?
Thank you. Tim?
So Barbara, are there any federal guidelines attached to this that anybody has a right to file a lawsuit against a town, for instance, like Goffstown, your projected need is 279, I assume that's units?
Right.
Okay. So if we don't meet this criteria in a reasonable amount of time or something close to it, are we liable for lawsuit by someone?
No, there's, just like with the 2005 assessment, this is a projection. First of all, it's a 2008 baseline number. We already have data for 2009. There have actually in Goffstown been an application that would qualify under this that's been approved since then. And as a result of having a couple of more years of data since it was put together, there are a lot of modifications that could be done if Goffstown was going to look at this number particularly. There is certainly no federal guidelines. This is really in response to a state statute.
Okay, thank you.
That provides no guidance. And that is one of the problems in putting together the methodology, because there really is no guidance. So that's why we had Bruce do a couple of things. We went back, we said, no, we sort of want to adjust this number. You could have somebody else do this report, use projected increases based on an annualized rate over the past 10 years, which would do significantly higher projections as to need growth, and have a completely different number.
Right.
So anybody can file a lawsuit. Hooksett is already finding itself on the other side of a couple in regards to some plans that they've had in conjunction with this particular statute. This is not intended to be used as a sword in that. It's intended to be used as a tool for a town in looking at its housing currently and what its projected needs might be. Because certainly if employment growths aren't there, if the income is off, then obviously all of these numbers would be slightly different.
Well, we do have an example, because the Rite Aid project is,
Right, that's what,
Workforce housing.
well,
Well, it's Neighborhood Works, and it's
Neighborhood Works, same
and it's
idea.
affordable housing.
workforce housing is a misnomer.
Well, that's how our
I
statute.
work too.
Wow.
Well, and it used to be called low income, so
You
and
do?
it's not. So anyways, but
Be
yeah,
careful.
and that's not so when you look at the 2008 number, that's not in there.
And the average rents over there are under $800 a month
I think you're gonna find
for
that,
those apartments,
I
those
think you're gonna
brand
find that
new.
affordable housing down the road, it's gonna be up to the town and the board to disprove the application rather than the applicant have to prove the merits of the application.
We have such a
Well, I
housing
don't know
stock on
that
the
anybody
low end
would
of the
have-
spectrum, it's never gonna
It's gonna happen.
happen.
Well, I mean, and you could.
We're fortunate in that we have a lot of development with small units of housing. And I think in Hooksett, they're in the soup because of the applicants were denied approvals for housing projects.
Well, I
And
don't, I don't.
Duly respected, I was involved in one, and they deserve to be denied, excuse me.
All right, so
Client's not watching.
but that's the sort of the general requirement and the methodology in coming up with the needs. And as I said, certainly some of the communities looked at these numbers and said not applicable, or we're not really in this region, we should be in this region. It's a planning tool, and this was the methodology that was used.
That is plain true, but thank you. I'm glad to hear that somebody goes to those things, and I like to hear about it, excuse me.
I ran this.
Now, any other items to come before the board this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Who do I pick for second?
And if
this
anybody
evening?
does have any comments, please, email them to me or to Brian, and I'll make sure that that the committee addresses them.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Right.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Brian, in your absence, we have directed you to buy yourself a pointer.
A laser pointer?
We have.
I was actually, I had it in my brain that I